Well, in our old lab, we didn't have such a special facility.
Yeah, up here I got it.
But in this new lab now, we can have each room separated so that it minimizes contamination. We want to keep the master mix totally free of any DNA extracts, any specimens. We don't want any DNA to contaminate this area when we make our master mix.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically I have a recipe for the master mix. I just have to add the master mix and the magnesium together depending on how many samples I have. So I need 2,400 microliters. This way. Master mix. Now I can make sure that I have all this, it's all at the same level. I didn't miss any rows or wells. Now it's ready to go out to the assembly area. Okay, so now I have my extracts, my master mix, and these are our standards. This is a quantitative test. So we have standards of various concentrations that will constitute our curve.
Yeah. To compare against.
Yes. So first I'm gonna use the multi-channel pipetter to pipette the extracts into the master mix. And the extract is just a clear fluid. Okay, now, same as before, I check and make sure all my levels are even. I didn't get a well or a row. And now I'm ready to seal it up. Okay, now I have to spin it down. I have my centrifuge with plates here. Just want to make sure everything's in the bottom, that there are bubbles down in there. Okay, while that's spinning, I can put some things away in the computer.
Yeah.
Much to see on this instrument, actually. It just looks like a box. ABI 7500, and this does our PCR for CMV and EBV. And we just take our plate with the master mix and the extracts and load it in. And then we just go over here. I've already transposed all the numbers from the plate map into there. So it's a plate map all the accession numbers, so that when our report comes out, we have our accession numbers on the report. And I just hit instrument and tell it to start. And it's going to check its function, and it's going to check the temperature of the block in there. Then it's up to temp, and it'll start, and it'll take 2 hours. And then this is the profile. It'll show you, it heats up to 95. It's going to go through 45 cycles. So when I get to the screen and I see it's done, I go to results, and I go to amplification plot, and our our QC standards are in these 6 wells. So I will highlight those 6 wells, and there's 2 detectors because we have CMV and we also have internal control.
Right.
So right now I'm looking at standards. So all I really want to know is, did it detect the CMV appropriately? And just at first glance, they look like they're spaced nicely. It looks like it's a good run. Then I can look at my curve, and you can see the points plotted. They look pretty good. We have numbers that we record to make sure that the curve is in QC.
Yep.
And then we go to the report, and the report gives us CMV value, the CT, where it crosses the threshold, and the quantity. In copies per milliliter of blood is what we report out. There is no internal control in these standards. All other samples, the samples have internal control, but there is no internal control here. But we can see our numbers for our standards are all very good. This is what we want to see. We have our standard set for each log. This test will detect between 313 and 1 million copies.
Wow.
So that's our range, 313 to 1 million. If it's above the threshold, we just report out it's above 1 million. That doesn't happen very often. And if it's below 313, we report it as negative, because it's too low to be a reliable value.
So sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Are there any positives on this test? Did anyone have anything?
On this run?
Yeah.
I'm sure there are. But there's actually, with CMVs, we don't get too many. Maybe just a few on each run.
Yeah.
EBVs have a lot of positives because,
Yeah.
you and I, one of us probably has EBV and has been exposed. I mean, it's a rather common thing. But right now, all I was checking was my standard curve.
Good.
Because
okay.
first, I want to make sure that my curve is good, that my my assay is working as far as the curve. Then I go to the amplification plot again, and I highlight all the rest. I don't need my standards in there now. I highlight the rest, and the next thing I check is that I have internal control. This is our threshold here. We want our internal control to cross between 24 and 30. So right in here. And so you can see that they all are together, or like outlying ones, they've all crossed. So knowing that we have internal control, it's like a PCR control. If something happened with my extractor, the internal control was put into the samples in the extraction right at the beginning. If I don't have any internal control anywhere, that means something went terribly wrong with my extraction. If there's 1 or 2 patients, it could be something in the patient sample that's inhibitory, or it could have been a clot or something that clogged up that particular well. But so I've checked that I have internal control. Then the next thing I do is I look at the channel for CMV. And while this looks like a lot of positives, a lot of it is just low level, way past our detection limit, sort of like low level junk. Actually, I have 3 controls. Well, we have our standards, but we have 3 controls down here. There's a negative, a low positive, and a high positive. So you can see we have a negative, it doesn't cross the threshold, and then a high crosses earlier, and then the low crosses later. We do have values that we check. There is a range for them. We check that those are in range. And then finally, we look at all the patients. And we can go to our report and see that where they cross the threshold. Most of this is low level. Here's a positive. And I will note the positives, and then I will go back to the here's our controls: negative, low and high, and then here's a positive patient. It's G5. I can go back to the amplification plot, and I will make sure that the curve is a good shape, is a good curve, because the curve should have this sort of a shape to it. If it's just some like weird, just like straight line that barely crosses, or Sometimes we get an unusually high number. There'll be some little blip at the beginning that'll cross, but then it's really negative. So I want to look at the curve to make sure it's a good curve.
Yep.
And then that's what we report out as positive.